Hey everyone, we're closing in on Midnight's launch. It is less than 90 days away, and the time seemed right to provide a more holistic round of feedback for Retribution. So, let's start with the recent beta patch notes, then we're going to review major problems. We're going to talk about Apex talents, we're going to talk about hero talents, we're going to touch on class tree issues, then we're going to do a rapid fire round of general feedback, and then we're going to wrap up with what Midnight-specific changes have worked really well. Buckle up, there's a lot to cover in this one. We finally got a set of patch notes outside of adding Crusading Strikes back to the talent tree. It is pretty limited in scope, but it did address some of my previous concerns. I am still slightly concerned at the lack of changes since Alpha, but this isn't unusual for Retribution. We've been here before. I'm a little sad to see the Light Within auto proc go away. It does free up global cooldowns during Avenging Wrath, but it was really nice to have that guaranteed Art of War. The Judge, Jury, and Executioner change will likely be contentious with some players, but it does make your Holy Power matter more during cooldown windows. While it does sacrifice some of our previous burst potential, it does make the gameplay loop much healthier. Divine Resonance still seems to function inconsistently, even with this recent patch. The ability works fine with Judgment usage, but when Hammer of Wrath is used, it will sometimes grant 3 Holy Power. This change itself is a great one. I'm just hoping the bugs are fixed soon so we can give accurate feedback on testing. On to major problems. Let's start with the biggest change. That's Hammer of Wrath's inclusion into Judgment. Conceptually, I'm on board and have even advocated for something similar in the past, but it is still missing something to differentiate the two abilities. As of right now, Judgment and Hammer of Wrath feel and function identically. The only difference outside of the animation is Hammer of Wrath does slightly more damage and has an additive boost to damage while executing through Vengeful Wrath. If we look at a breakdown of damage during your Avenging Wrath window, you can see how Hammer of Wrath performs. When you combine damage events, it comes close to slightly less than 10% of our damage in our burst window, and if you add in our mastery with High Lord's Wrath, it moves to about 12.5%. I just think that if this ability is only available during Avenging Wrath, it should contribute more than what it currently offers. The second major problem relates to the combination of Divine Toll related abilities. There are a few areas to touch on here. Divine Resonance's functionality was mostly fixed, and it continues to be the superior choice on that node. It has been the best choice since it was introduced in Dragonflight, at least for Retribution. I'd like to see Quickened Invocation as a competitive option for all Paladin specializations. The reduction should go from 15 seconds to 30 for Retribution only. That would make it so it would always align with our cooldowns, whether it be Execution Sentence or Wake of Ashes with Radiant Glory. I just think it would offer a more compelling choice, and giving people options that change gameplay timing, I think, is really good. The third major problem relates to Templar Strikes. Most of our other damaging abilities have a hasted global cooldown. Templar Strike and Slash don't. Making this change would increase the fluidity of our rotation and bring this ability in alignment with our other Holy Power builders. That just makes sense. Templar Strike and Slash also feel identical. The only difference is that the Slash combo does about double the damage of a regular Templar Strike. Similar to the Judgment Hammer of Wrath situation, there is really no meaningful difference between the two abilities. This is further amplified because Blade of Justice and Judgment are higher on the priority list. As of right now, you will just press this button when you have nothing else to press. We would almost be better off not having this ability entirely and just having Crusader Strike with no charges and no cooldown, just a filler spell. Comparing this ability to other Holy Power generators, they all do something else. Judgment leaves a 20% damage taken from Spender's debuff, Blade of Justice leaves a damage over time, and a 5% damage vulnerability. Templar Strike and Slash do nothing outside of damage. I'd argue a healthy change would be to offer a redesign of this ability. Let us choose how it generates holy power, similar to the choice we make with Holy Blade. Do we want it to generate 1 holy power with no cooldown, or 2 holy power with a short cooldown? Just make it do something more than build 1 holy power at a time and do damage. The 4th major problem is Crusading Strikes. I've already covered it in a recent video, but in short, not being able to track this ability goes against Blizzard's design philosophy. Just delete it. In today's WoW, I like Crusading Strikes, we can track it how we want, but in Midnight, it's not going to be up to par. The 5th major problem is the Instrument of Retribution passive. This design has been around since Legion in some form or another, but I think now is the time to let this go. It offers a whopping 9 seconds of Avenging Wrath when a party member dies. That is just about half of our baseline Avenging Wrath duration. I can't stress how powerful this can be if one of your raid members dies at the right time. Retribution usually looks very strong in early progression or early on in a tier because people are dying all over the place. As the tier goes on, guess what happens? Retribution looks worse and worse even though we're playing the exact same, but our party members are just dying less. I'm okay with us receiving a benefit when others die, but it should only be a defensive benefit. A flat damage reduction for 9 seconds would be fine. Or alternatively, how about every time a party member dies in combat, you get an additive flat 10% damage reduction. Let's say it scales up to 30% or some other arbitrary number, just keep it defensive only. The 6th major problem is a combination of pathing issues and the barren nature of our talent tree. Outside of traditional choice nodes, you have exactly 2 choices on a single target encounter. The first choice, you pick between Judgment of Justice versus Imperium Power, and the second choice, you pick within Pathing to Radiant Glory or the Crusade path. If you are focusing on AoE, you have 4 dedicated talents that you can pick up, but it comes with a single target trade-off. It never feels good to have to sacrifice single target options to be able to AoE efficiently. I think one of the reasons this is painful is because where the 2-point nodes are located in the talent tree. We are hard committing 6 points in the midsection of the tree into Zealot's Fervor, Blades of Light, and Divine Wrath. We would likely flex the 2 points in Heart of the Crusader, but that clump of required points really limits our choices. It all sits in 3 lines in the middle of the tree. It doesn't move into the top of the tree, it doesn't move down to the bottom of the tree, but all of those points are fairly high impact. For Herald of the Sun, if we play it, you'll potentially want to pick up Burn to Ash. We'll see how the numbers come in, but it's a very low impact talent in a capstone-esque position. It just feels out of place compared to the other 2 capstone options. I mean, look at Crusade and look at Judge, Jury, and Executioner. These are high impact, high damage options. And Burn to Ash is just a small passive that'll only really benefit Herald more than Templar. Let's shift to Apex talents. Being honest, I had some concerns with this initially, but the more I've playtested it, the more I've liked it. That isn't saying it is perfect, but it is better than expected. The first issue isn't necessarily related to the Apex talent directly, but instead Art of War. Art of War triggers off auto attacks, making it susceptible to munching. I know it's not a technical term, but there are situations where you want to spend first. Whether it's Divine Storm or Templar's Verdict or whatever the case is, you're capped on Holy Power, or even have procs like Divine Purpose or Judge, Jury, and Executioner. You want to spend. And it's the right choice to spend your resources first. So the downside of that is that Art of War can proc again during that window, and you lose that proc. I mean, technically you never get it, but it still feels bad to have that potential loss of resources when you're playing a specialization correctly. My preferred solution would be that Art of War could stack up to 2 times. I also think that the design of this Apex talent is a bit split. It is a minor complaint, but bear with me. Points 1 and 4 are closely related. They focus on Blade of Justice and Art of War. The remaining 2 points don't impact Blade of Justice or Art of War at all, and they're entirely focused on our spenders during Avenging Wrath only. While I like the power levels of the middle points, it just doesn't fit with the theme or design of this Apex talent. We need Blizzard to decide, do we want this to be based around Blade of Justice and Art of War procs? Or are we going to have this based around Avenging Wrath? I think the direction they want to head is to focus on Blade of Justice, so maybe those 2 middle points need another pass, but right now it's fine. It functions. It's not a major issue. Now on to hero talents. Templar came out swinging in the War Within, and it has been the go-to pick, so let's start there. It is my favorite hero tree in all of WoW by a landslide. Something about how good Hammer of Light feels to press makes it incredible. The only issues I have with Templar are focused around the choice nodes in that tree. Endless Wrath and Sanctification just come down to a math problem. You're going to pick what does the more damage, and there really isn't a choice. My personal preference is I like Sanctification a little bit more, but because Empyrean Hammer has been tuned down a little bit more, the choice is a lot less impactful. Divine Exaction and Seal of the Templar also present a similar choice, but this time it's even more pronounced. While I love the feel of Divine Exaction, if you are ever going to be pressing Templar's Verdict, you're going to pick Seal of the Templar. It might make more sense to replace Endless Wrath with Divine Exaction and just come up with something new to replace this slot. That would allow Divine Exaction to actually be a compelling choice and likely similar in damage output. I personally love the feel of Divine Toll in Shadowlands, and seeing that come back in Divine Exaction is really cool, and I think it fits Templar nicely. Just not in the spot it's currently at. Unrelenting Charger is 100% pick rate in PvE. You are always going to pick it for on-demand mobility. Bonds of Fellowship, while it does offer some unique utility, just needs to go. It's not a competitive option. Instead, consider adding some of Death Knight's Death Charge functionality into this node instead. So let's shift a bit into Herald of the Sun here. I recently released a full video talking about why Herald of the Sun needs a rework, so I'll keep the details here a little bit lighter. Dawnlight and Sun's avatar are forgettable and lack kit interaction. If the animations were better, it would make how passive they are more palatable, but they're not. There isn't a ton of kit synergy either. Most of the Herald of the Sun is focused entirely on 3 things: Hammer of Wrath, Divine Storm, and the functionality of your Dawnlight. Hammer of Wrath, as it currently stands, is a relatively low impact spell, and Divine Storm isn't even used on single target. It just puts Herald in a position where it doesn't really do anything well, and it isn't as fun as Templar. Even if the damage is competitive or fairly close, Templar's just more fun. And here's something silly. With the change to our class tree, if you take Blessing of the Dawn and Will of the Dawn, you can kiss your passive move speed goodbye. You'll only have a 5% window where that would even activate. Blizzard really just needs to go back to the drawing board with Herald of the Sun and cook up something more fun and engaging for both Retribution and for Holy. They can do better, and we've seen them do better. With the transition into Midnight, the class tree got 3 additional points to work with. While some classes would be ecstatic about that change, it really doesn't do a ton for Paladin. Most of the talents in the class tree have limited impact and are negligible in their output. In my opinion, the class tree is where you should put all of the cool stuff. Some great examples of this includes Demon Hunter's Wings of Wrath, Monk's Lighter Than Air, or even Warrior's Champion Spear. All of these are really cool and fit the theme of the class. Paladin doesn't really get anything as fun as that. I'm of the strong opinion that spell warding should be available for all 3 Paladin specializations. As of right now, Retribution has nothing that Holy and Protection already bring to the table. I don't need Ret to have more, but I do want parity between specializations. Giving spell warding to all 3 fixes that issue entirely, and it allows them to bring something unique and valuable into raid. Divine Spurs is just a worse version of Divine Steed, especially if playing Templar. I'd recommend redesigning it to offer some of the same utility that Death Knight Charge offers for Death Knights. I think having some knockback mitigation would be really cool, and people would be excited to spend a talent point for that. Blessing of the Dawn was added recently. I think the theme is fine, but it is realistically garbage. Let me explain. It requires all 3 talent points in the capstones to fully utilize this energy here. So Blessing of Dusk reduces damage taken the lower health you are. Blessing of Dawn redirects the damage to you. And Lightbringer spreads healing received. So this works out of so you take damage, but you take less damage because you have a DR. You're healed back up, and then Lightbringer spreads that healing to the party, and everyone's healthy. In combination, it works well, but it forces you into taking all 3 capstones. I also think that Blessing of the Dawn puts Retribution, and to some degree Holy, at more risk during Raid or Mythic Plus. Being at 85% health isn't exactly a great thing when you don't have a higher base health pool to compensate. If the talent also increased your health by 15%, it would be a must pick and only feel like a benefit. So you'd get the cool interaction, but at no cost. It wouldn't be a detriment. As a side note, why do we have to talent for our interrupt? I know with the Dragonflight rework, a lot of specializations added interrupt in the talent tree, but it's gone for Holy now, so it should just be a baseline ability for Ret and Prod. It feels like a waste of a talent point for an extremely important ability that is core to every piece of content you do in the game, whether it's raid, PvP, questing, anything. If you have an enemy and they're casting a spell, you're going to interrupt, and taking a talent point for that doesn't feel great. Guided Prayer is locked behind cooldown reduction for our stun. You won't take this stun frequently in raid, and it feels like a wasted talent. Just swap the talent locations between Guided Prayer and the Hammer of Justice cooldown reduction, and the problem's solved. Speaking of CC, Blinding Light could use another pass. Coming in at a 90-second cooldown is laughable. If we compare similar CC abilities like Chaos Nova, Leg Sweep, or even Blinding Sleet, all of those come in between 45 seconds to a minute, and they can even be reduced further in some cases. And let's be real here. I prefer an AoE stun in almost every case over a blind. And at the very minimum, Blinding Light's cooldown should be reduced to 1 minute. I think the most egregious waste of talent points in the class tree is the Turn Evil path, though. It has 0 use cases in PvE, and to even get it to function without hard casting the ability, you have to dump another point to make it instant cast. I guess it's thematic, but it's practically useless. Having targets flee in Mythic Plus specifically is absolute garbage. There's some niche cases in PvP where you might want this against an Unholy DK, but the reality is, 2 points is a big ask for a very niche situation. It's rapid fire time. I'll mention each of these changes with limited explanations, but each of these areas could definitely be iterated on. Blade of Vengeance should interact with the Light Within Apex talent. Sanctify needs to be redesigned. It is one of our lowest damage point per value talents. It's gotta go. Empyrean Legacy needs to proc off of any finisher, not just a single target finisher. It is also very low impact. 1 extra, slightly empowered Divine Storm every minute is just crap for it being that far down the tree. Tempest of the Lightbringer should have Divine Storm do 20% more damage and project the full damage value like it did in Legion. It's just fun. Boundless Judgment and High Lord's Wrath are unintuitive, and the tooltip is difficult to understand for more casual players. Just swap Boundless Judgment to have Judgment generate 1 additional holy power. That would make it so you can pick whatever ability you want to have generate more holy power. Blade of Justice, Judgment, or maybe even both. Righteous Cause is lacking a scaling component compared to Art of War. It's always the lesser choice in PvE. Remove the damage reduction to secondary targets for Seething Flames. And the last one I'll mention here is a little bit different. Spell density in melee is a problem. Even with appropriate settings, visibility is getting worse and worse every expansion. It is now amplified even further with the introduction of Devourer. Yeah, the spell effects are pretty cool for the person playing Devourer, but for everyone else, it's just a ton of visual clutter. Blizzard needs to do better with the spell density filtering options and really rein these in. For once, I'd like to be able to see what I'm doing in Melee, whether it's seeing my own spells or seeing my character. With how bosses are currently designed and the visual effects tied to them, you just can't a lot of the time. While I've covered a ton of things that I think need another round of review from the WoW dev team, Retribution is actually in a really good spot as far as fun goes. If Midnight launched today, with bugs fixed of course, it'd be a more fun version than what we play on live. Here's some of the highlights. The new Hammer of Wrath animation is incredibly good and a major improvement. It does make Judgment feel a little bit dated and almost too similar in appearance, but that doesn't detract from how good it looks. Judge, Jury, and Executioner is a phenomenally fun talent, and it adds a high degree of consistency to our burst window. It is even more fun when playing Templar, and it makes the rotation feel buttery smooth. Combining Final Reckoning and Execution Sentence into one ability has been a long requested change, and this revamped ability hit the nail on the head. I really couldn't have asked for a better design on this ability. Keeping the base damage and crit of Avenging Wrath still intact and allowing the cooldown to have high impact while keeping the ramping nature of Crusade is just a winning formula. So where does this leave us heading into Midnight? I think the best place we can leave feedback is going to be the Blizzard forums. I've linked 2 posts below, one from the initial beta launch and one from today. Feel free to like them and comment with your own opinions, and as always, be respectful and try to be as clear and concise as possible. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think is the most important thing to change for Retribution in the comments below. I'd love to hear more. Also, keep an eye out for more Retribution content coming your way. Death Jesters is doing some Midnight raid testing this weekend. I'll make sure to record all the gameplay, and I'll let you know my thoughts on the specific bosses as well. See you in the next one.